tips to accelerate your career with top companies and meet leading business disruptors who will share pivotal moments in being a successful leader. This is the Forward Motion Business Show with Professor Ken and Professor Paul A. Marino.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is the Forward Motion Business Show. I'm Professor Ken.
And I'm Professor Paul Marino.
And today, Paul, we got a good friend of you and a guest of our program, Richard, who you're introduced. And we're going to talk about some important things. I think that's important not only for the community, but us as individuals. And that's the Guardian Watch program and the First T program, which is helping out our local community and those individuals, young individuals who need some assistance. So, Paul, why don't you introduce Richard for us?
Well, I'm very happy to have Richard with us today. Not only is Richard and I colleagues, but we are also partners in the Guardian Watch charity venture. And Richard has a long and fruitful background in education. You actually started, if I'm correct, you actually started teaching inside the prison system. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was my very first position as a teacher. Unfortunately, it wasn't a classroom. It was in a cell block.
Wow.
At Turner Guilford Knight. And so that was very interesting.
That's great. So let me ask you a question about that, because I really don't know much about that. I know there's a program in those systems. Do they have to volunteer, or are they picked for this program? How does that work? How does one, because they're going through a whole different environment, right? So how does one decide, hey, I want to get educated on something?
Sure. So as you can imagine, when they're incarcerated, they don't have many choices.
Yeah.
And so this is a particular department of the school where it's at-risk students. So these are students that are still minors, but have committed adult crimes. And so they are in an adult prison. Now they have their own wing, they have their own floor that's designated for them, but they are still entitled, because they are minors, to an education.
Of course.
And so the school system is mandated to send a teacher in there to educate them. So in essence, I would go in as part of the at-risk program and follow through a curriculum. Now, it was very broad because the age limits were different. Pretty much you were middle and high school students in there.
Right.
And the guards were in there, and you're in the big hall, and they bring them out, they sit them down. And basically, it was the best behaved class I ever had. It was very intimidating. But there was no side conversations.
Right.
No fooling around.
Right.
My lesson went very smooth.
Yeah.
But it was it wasn't satisfying at all. There was no feedback. There was no reward in that sense. The reason you get into education is obviously not for the money. There's a passion there, and you want to see a difference. And you really couldn't see too much there. There were a few students who you could see just by the look in their eye. You can tell they didn't want to say anything, but by the look in their eye that they wanted to, they wanted more.
Right.
So I started working with them on the side.
Right.
Eventually though, I really did want to have a classroom and that experience, everything that the university had taught me, to expect.
Sure.
And
The
traditional classroom. And so once I had an opportunity to get out, I did.
Great. And did that lead you to what you're doing now? Because you're still focused in helping at-risk individuals, right, through Guardian Watch. So tell us about that journey a little bit.
I think it's just a natural part, right? That was a God-given gift that is basically, I'm drawn to students that need help.
Yeah.
I think that comes from my background. As a child, I was one of those students, and I think that's a natural flow of things, right? You tend to want to help students you understand. And so having that background, I generally wanted to help those kids, and I was attracted to helping those kids. I felt that it was easy, and it was I had a lot of success.
Yeah.
So I would always be drawn that way.
Yeah. And that's important. That's admirable to do.
Well, Richard helped me found Guardian Watch. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what Guardian Watch is, what it does, and what we're trying to accomplish?
Sure. So Guardian Watch started off as a service to mentor and help students that were severely at risk.
Mhm.
Our main population to start off was foster children. So you can imagine some of the scenarios that we were dealing with and the children we were dealing with. So, I mean, we had children that lost their parents because they murdered one another. It was pretty severe.
Mm.
And so dealing with those students, we had great success in combining the mentorship and the individualized and personalized academic attention they needed. A lot of these students face trauma.
Mm.
And during those years of trauma, academics are lost.
Yeah.
But they're still moved on a lot of times because of the trauma.
Mm-hmm, sure.
They're given a chance to move on. And because of that, there's a gap in there. And so we would target that gap. And Guardian Watch does an assessment where we diagnose down to the granular aspect of what's missing in that student's academic career, and then we target that gap along with mentorship. We have teachers that have many years of experience, can do it all. Yeah. One of the other things that's amazing about Guardian Watch is that once we get this data, once we find out what they're missing, we'll then turn around and make an individual plan for each student. We'll do that with AI, and we'll have AI come up with the most effective and efficient way to tackle that gap,
right?
For results in the time that we have, because that's always been an issue for us, keeping them. And then from that, what we'll do is we hand it over to these amazing teachers who, 27, 30 years experience with all kinds of background students. And then they kind of blend AI with their personal experience to kind of make this incredible bond with the students.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference. It turns out to be not time that you need, but it's that quality time, the effective time. And that's where we excel at.
So recently, we had an amazing affiliation.
Yes.
Moving forward. We're very proud of that, both being a part of it and the potential it opens up for everyone. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I have one of my vices is golf.
Is it a vice, a hobby, or is it just?
It's you ask my wife, she'll have probably a different opinion there. Yeah. So, but definitely, the First Tee is a program for the community youth to get involved and learn life skills. And it was a great partnership. They needed a strong academic. What we had to do is convince them that having a strong academic component would really help these students, succeed and make it through. Not everybody can make it in a sport. Right. Turning pro, getting paid for your athleticism is not easy. And so having a background in academics where you can turn to is fantastic, because then you can use that as well. Yeah. If it doesn't, if the pros don't come calling, right. And so we made this great partnership. We really sat down and worked out how do we fit in academics, because these kids go to a golf course, and when you're there, you don't want to study. You don't want to, last thing you want to do, you get there, you're excited, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, there's a classroom right there for you. Right. So it was a challenge, but we're finding a good mixture of giving them the academics, and then they go out on the course and learn the life skills through the successes and challenges of golf.
Yeah, and golf is not an easy sport to learn. I mean, it's a frustrating sport to learn, in my opinion. I try to play it too, and sometimes I enjoy it, and other times I'm like, why am I even here? Right?
Absolutely.
But you see that even with the professional level, sometimes you see the pros who can't make a putt or make the green, and so you don't feel too bad.
That actually makes me feel better.
Yeah, right. Makes you. But I think the importance here is that we all, for many, many decades, we know that sports and academics, music and academics go hand in hand because it helps round out that individual. And you learn so many qualities when you're playing a sport, or if you're, let's say you're doing music. And then with golf, the etiquette and the process, the standard, the SOP, the way you have to proceed in golf is very regimented.
Yes.
And I think that adds to the learning and the individual, because now you understand how structure works a little bit.
It adds to the discipline, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great mirror, right? So you have, you think it's an individual sport, but there's a team behind that. There's someone that's got to teach you the course layout, how to manage the course, how to calculate what to use, what not to use. There's a coach that's going to teach you the fundamentals of how to make it there. And then you have to transfer those skills that you learned onto the course in order to be successful. Right. Well, isn't that an amazing mirror for, a youth growing up, right? Coming through school.
That's right.
It's all on you. You have to make that transfer, but there's a team that's there to help you. And so if you have to lean on that team, you have to practice what you've done, what you've learned, so that you can master it, so that when you get out there, you can transition that and convert it to success.
Right.
Yeah, it's a perfect mirror.
An interesting side note, Jack Nicklaus's, who was probably one of the most successful golfers to ever play the game, his father required him to get a degree before he went on tour. And when he asked his father why, he said, just in case you don't make it on tour, you have something to fall back on.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it too. And like you, I've had, in my younger life and growing up, I've had incredible struggles as well, and were able to overcome them and put me on the road that I'm at today. But education was part of that. Education was part of that process that helped, let's say, break the cycle or start a new cycle, which I think is more important.
Absolutely. And that's a great story to say, even though you've had those struggles, or even though you've failed, where we run to so many students, you can't give up, and so, like as a youth, I went through and I struggled through school all the way through until I got to a point where it was either fail or not, so I had to make it or not. I was on my own in that sense. And so, it just clicked where this is what I have to do in order to succeed. So I then put in the work. The work I realized was real work before I thought I was doing some work, and it just wasn't working out. And I said, but then I figured out this is the real work because I really wanted it. And then in that sense, I started succeeding in school and was able to turn things around where you would have never imagined that, seeing, and this is a perfect, kind of like a, metaphor for school in a sense, right? School is an institutional, the school system is big, it's institutional, it's large. Right? I've been in the school system for a long time, and they need to evolve, and they're trying to evolve. But like anything large in that sense, any bureaucracy that big, it's hard to change.
It's hard to change.
It's hard to move. And look at what's happening with the kids now, right? Everything is very much individualized. Everything is fast. Everything is constantly online. Everything's constantly evolving. Right. So the kids are learning in a different way, and the school has been left behind. What's popular,
We were given an interesting statistic. We're starting to get involved a little bit with the LPGA, the women golfers who have chosen golf as a career. And we found out, talking to the people at the LPGA, that their GPA matters greatly to these young women. Why don't you elaborate on what they have to go through to move forward?
So it's like high school. A lot of times to play a sport, you have to have a 2.0 or something to stay on the team or to play. And so similar to that, but it goes beyond that. At the university level, coaches are given an incentive based on their average GPA of their athletes. And so it's a financial incentive. So if you think about the school, the university needs to produce alumni that are going to succeed. It's the business of school, right? And so as an athlete, what happens is a lot of times you it's a very small percentage. I think it's something like less than 1% that make it to a pro athletic position, right? Think about the other 99 athletes at that university. Well, if you don't give them a career path after school, after university, well, they're not going to succeed. And that alumni turns into an alumni that's, bitter, or didn't succeed. It's not a good model for a university.
Right.
And so they push their athletes and their coaches through incentives to make sure their GPA is higher.
Yeah.
What most people don't realize is that someone coming up, and let's talk about women's golf because that's the topic that, has been recently thrust upon us. One, these women are spending such an amazing amount of time on the course, perfecting their skills. They don't have time for their academics. Yet at the same time, they have to maintain their GPA. They have to get into a college golf program, so they have to test well to get in. And once they get in, they have to maintain that GPA. Am I correct in that?
Yes. And you're talking about a student who's trying to achieve that level. Now you're talking about someone who, because they practice so much, unlike us at golf, they have to put in 8-10 hours a day of golf. And so what ends up happening is, where does the academics lie? Right? Yeah. So you're saying you have to achieve because you need this athletic skill, but you need to get into the university because you need to score the standard for the university. There's an SAT standard. There's a, so where does that balance go?
Yeah.
And so everybody's been leaning, because once you see a talent in these students, you think, let me put them out. As a parent, you're like, let me get them out there. Let me get them a coach. Let me get them on the field. Let me, everything's, academics go out the window, especially as a proud parent. You're like,
that's my daughter out there.
Right. That's my daughter, scratch golfer, and, she's 13, and academics goes out the window. And so you're homeschooled. And then now as a homeschool student, there's a whole problem where, that curriculum is left on the parent.
So we want to talk a little bit about AI, and in the charity, we do a lot of testing, a lot of diagnostics, but you actually use AI to target those deficiencies. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we do an assessment. It's a nationally recognized assessment for math and reading. Like I mentioned, it really parses out all the gaps, and it gets down to the nitty gritty of every little aspect, that's missing. Is it base 10? Is it, or this particular part of base 10, or, some form of phonics? I mean, it really breaks it down. It doesn't matter the age. Right. This is just based on how they performed on this assessment. And then we use AI to find, so depending on the time, let's say we have them for a 10-week program. Say we have them for, a 6-month program. We tell AI to give us the most effective way to bridge that gap, the most efficient way to teach it. And so it really breaks it down to the fastest and most effective way to get that item across, to move them across that line. Yeah. So we can notch that off and say we did that, and move to the next one. And it gives us the series. This is first, hit this first. And then we take that, and like I said, we'll have a teacher with, 25, 30 years experience, who will most of the time, be able to tell you those things before AI.
Right.
But AI gives you that specific plan, and what AI can do is say, you can spend 10 minutes on this.
Right.
And that's enough. Whereas as a teacher, you might want to go further. And so we give that plan to the teachers, and obviously they have the autonomy to move it and see what's best, because they build that bridge,
And I think that's the key, because as AI becomes part of our life every day, and as we get out of 26, it's going to be in everything we do, right? I think it's a tool, and you're using it the best way you possibly can to help you shape what you're doing. It's not going to do the thinking for you, but it's going to help you set some guidelines and structure directionally, and then the expert should come in and do what they do best and help form that. So it saves all that brain power for other things.
Yes.
I think, a lot of people are afraid of AI. You're hearing about jobs being replaced, and there'll be some of that. But I think if we embrace it as a tool, it's only going to make our lives easier and better. Just like the cell phone, just like the internet, just like everything else that's come along.
Well, for the newcomer coming in and using AI, and I was that, and I very much still am that. It's sometimes more work.
Yeah.
It's sometimes more work because you don't know what you want from it.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes sold out there as the answer to all also.
No.
And so you say, give me the answer.
Right.
And the thing is, it's going to give you a lot of answers.
And so the way I'm trying to get that message across, we're using AI. You have to think of it as a tool. So if you're building a table, okay, you out of wood, you need a few tools. You need a saw, you need a screw, a power screw, you need screws, maybe a hammer, things like that. You need a paintbrush to put the lacquer on. Okay. AI is like that. Every tool is going to help you build that table. So you have to use the right tool for the right job so that means the right AI for the right particular function.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be everything to everybody. And that's where the learning curve is. You got to understand that this is a hammer, this is a screwdriver.
Yes.
Now I can make it work that way for you.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be huge in academics.
In everything.
In everything. And, I think in academics, as long as we use and make sure we have those experienced teachers to bring their mastery into it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an amazing tool.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us and giving us the insight. And you're doing such great, admirable work with the organization.
Absolutely.
And it's so valuable. It really is valuable for education at all levels. Here, obviously, at the Chapman Graduate School of Business, we talk about the MBAs and executive MBAs. But before you get there, you have to get through the process. You have to start with the education. And if you don't have that environment, you can't excel in life. And that's helped me, and it's helped all of us at this table as well, and it's valuable.
I think as educators, we need to teach the passion of education.
Exactly.
And so you have to, like I said, it hit me when I realized I needed it. Yeah. And I gained a passion for it. I wanted to succeed in school because I knew it would give me an advantage later on. And that's important. Yes. And I think that's something that we need to do.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. Thanks for joining everyone. I'm Professor Ken.
And I'm Professor Paul Marino.
And we'll see you out there real soon.